Have you ever witnessed a moment when a crowd falls silent, their hearts beating faster because they know what is about to happen will change everything? In a peaceful Seattle coffee shop, a blind man and his Labrador are enjoying their morning as usual until a brash biker shows up. Little does he know that he is about to make the biggest mistake of his life. He provokes, he taunts, then he does something no one expected. He kicks the dog. But as soon as the kick lands, the entire coffee shop holds its breath. Because what he doesn't know is, this dog is no ordinary dog. Before we continue, comment, where in the world are you watching this video from? And if you believe in heartwarming stories, don't forget to subscribe to the channel right now, because tomorrow there will be a special story for you. Seattle is a city of gentle drizzles and gray skies most mornings. Along the bustling streets, among modern high-rise buildings, there is a peaceful corner called Breeze Cafe. This is not just an ordinary coffee shop. It is a place for people to find a little relaxation in the hustle and bustle of life, where quiet stories take place amid the clinking of cups and the smell of coffee permeating the air. Every morning, Breeze Cafe welcomes regular customers, businessmen rushing with laptops, artists looking for inspiration, and lonely customers who come here just to sit quietly, letting their souls wander among the passing people. But there is one special customer that everyone knows. A middle-aged man with gray hair and dark sunglasses covering eyes that have lost their light over time. Next to him, a large yellow Labrador lies neatly under the table, silent but majestic. They are an inseparable couple. Have you ever imagined that in just one moment, everything you have ever known, loved, worked hard to have, suddenly disappeared? 7 years ago, Daniel Brooks was a firefighter, a hero who did not hesitate to rush into blazing flames to save people. He believed that his life would always be tied to action, to the mission of protecting the weak. But then, an accident changed everything. During a terrible fire, while trying to save a trapped family, an iron beam collapsed, and when Daniel woke up, all he saw was endless blackness. Can you imagine? One day, you could see the world, and the next day, all was darkness. No more familiar faces, no more sunlight, no more reflection of yourself in the mirror. Daniel fell into the abyss of despair. In the days that followed, he simply existed. No mission, no hope. But then, something miraculous happened. Ranger was no ordinary dog. Before becoming Daniel's eyes, Ranger served in the Seattle Police Department's K-9 unit. He was trained to catch criminals, detect explosives, and protect his teammates with his life. He was more than just a dog. He was a warrior. But after a serious injury in the line of duty, Ranger was forced to retire. No more breathless chases, no more police sirens, no more days on the thin line between life and death. Two lost souls, a man who had lost his light and a dog who had lost his meaning in life, found each other. For the first time in months, Daniel felt a reason to go outside. Ranger didn't just guide him, it pulled him out of the darkness, out of self-pity and fear. It didn't just help him cross the street, it helped him find himself. Do you believe in fateful connections? Do you think that sometimes a creature can walk into your life and change it forever? From then on, they appeared at Breeze Cafe every morning. Daniel liked to sit at his familiar outdoor table, sipping his favorite strong coffee, listening to the conversations around him, and feeling Ranger's warmth under his feet. Their life seemed peaceful, But does the world always respect people like Daniel? Does everyone understand that a guide dog is not a pet to be played with? And most importantly, is anyone stupid enough to provoke a canine warrior who has been trained to protect his master at all costs? Little did anyone know that this peace would be shattered in just a few moments. Then one day, strangers appeared. The roar of engines broke the coffee shop's silence. A group of 3 men stepped off their big motorcycles. The leader, Travis, had an uneasy presence, a crooked smile, shifting eyes, and a smugness that radiated from every step. He saw Ranger, and he did something he would regret for the rest of his life. Have you ever seen injustice right before your eyes, but didn't know what to do? Have you ever wondered what would happen when a mindless person challenged a true warrior? Are you ready to see justice served suddenly? Keep reading. The roar of the motorcycles tore through the peaceful Breeze Cafe, making everyone in the cafe turn around in surprise. 3 men, wearing shabby leather jackets, stepped off their bikes with an arrogant air. Their boots clattered against the pavement with each heavy step. The leader, Travis, with his muscular body and arms covered in faint tattoos, squinted his eyes as he looked around, as if he were looking for something to cause trouble. His 2 companions, Roy and Deke, who seemed quieter but no less dangerous, stood behind them, ready to assist if anything happened. Everyone in the cafe began to avert their gazes. No one wanted to get into trouble. But then Travis's gaze stopped. Right in front of him, under a small table by the railing, a yellow Labrador lay silently, its eyes alert but calm. Travis sneered. He nudged Roy, pointing at the dog. "This dog looks good, huh? Do you think he can fight?" Roy laughed, but Deke just raised an eyebrow, saying nothing. Travis stepped forward, curiosity mixed with amusement in his eyes. Ranger didn't move, but there was a quiet tension in his body, a wariness that only those who knew canines could detect. He crouched down, raised his hand, and waved it in front of Ranger's face, as if to see if the dog would react. Daniel, who had been calm all this time, slowly put down his coffee, turned his head toward the voice, and spoke softly. "Don't tease him, man. He's just doing his job." Daniel couldn't see Travis, but he sensed him, from the slight smell of alcohol on his breath to the scuffling of his boots on the stone floor. Anyone with a modicum of common sense would know that when a guide dog is lying this still, the only thing you should do is leave it alone. Travis wasn't one of those people. He tilted his head, looked at Daniel, then back at Ranger. A mocking smile crossed his lips. "Oh, so he's a guide dog?" Travis said, his voice trailing off in mockery. "He's probably just like any other dog. I bet he just walks around and takes food from his owner." A hush fell. A few of the customers turned to look. A bartender shook his head slightly, his hand flicking at his phone as if ready to call someone. Daniel took a slow breath, keeping his voice calm but firm. "I don't want anything to do with this. Just leave us alone." The words were simple, no threat, no challenge, just a respectful request. But sometimes, people like Travis don't understand respect. He narrowed his eyes. Then he did something he would regret for the rest of his life. Travis suddenly swung his leg and kicked Ranger. The kick wasn't too hard, but it was enough to shock those around him. There was a dry pop as his knee connected with Ranger's ribs. Everything froze for a second. Daniel felt Ranger's breathing change instantly. The dog's muscles contracted, all the calmness before now turned into a wave of intense tension. The onlookers held their breath. Anyone who knew canines knew that this was the most dangerous moment, Ranger wasn't a pet dog. He didn't react the way a normal animal would. He had been trained to recognize threats, to protect, and to act when necessary. In a split second, Ranger sprang to his feet. His eyes weren't as gentle as before. Now, there was a sharpness to them that belonged to a true warrior. The cafeteria fell into absolute silence. Travis took a reflexive step back. Ranger didn't growl. He didn't need to. But his posture had changed. No longer the dog lying still under the table. He stood straight, steady, ears erect, eyes locked on Travis. He could feel it. The chilling feeling of facing something, unlike any other dog he'd ever encountered. What the hell is wrong with you?" Travis stammered. And then a voice spoke up, calm but authoritative. "You just kicked a K9 veteran, man." Daniel stood up, placing a gentle hand on Ranger's back. "Do you know what you just did?" The only sound in the cafe was the wind. Ranger stood still, but his entire body tensed like a compressed spring. One wrong move from Travis, one sign of danger from his master, and he would spring into action. Where would this story go? What would Travis do next? Would he learn that some things should never be challenged, or would he make his final mistake? The world seemed to stop. The moment Travis's kick hit Ranger, everything changed. It was no longer a dog lying quietly under the table, no longer a blind man who only knew how to keep quiet. The peaceful space of Breeze Cafe now became stifling, tense to the point of suffocation. The Ranger reacted immediately, like a trained warrior. His body turned as fast as lightning, his forelegs firmly planted, his back arched in an attacking position. His sharp eyes locked onto Travis, no longer the usual gentleness, but the gaze of a warrior ready for action. Those with experience with K9 dogs recognized this immediately. Ranger's breathing changed. It was no longer slow and calm like before. He was on high alert, every muscle in his body ready to protect his master. Travis paused. He was no longer smiling. Something cold, invisible ran down his spine. He couldn't explain the feeling, but it made him take an involuntary step back. He felt like he had made a big mistake. All the while, Daniel hadn't said a word, but his hand, which had been resting loosely on the table, now rested lightly on Ranger's back. It was a subtle gesture, but it was enough to give an order, and Ranger understood the order. "Hey, do you know who you just kicked?" A voice rang out. All eyes in the cafe turned to Travis. It was a man in his 50s, wearing a rolled-up shirt, standing nearby with sharp eyes. "That's a former K9, you idiot." Travis turned around, furious, but was immediately stopped by the stares from the people around him. The bartender was holding his phone, clearly ready to call the police. A young woman stood near the door, clutching her handbag, her eyes filled with rage. An old man, who had been sitting in the corner, tapped his fingers on the table, his eyes fixed on Travis. They had seen it all. No longer an indifferent crowd. No longer people who stood by without reacting. The atmosphere in the bar had changed, and Travis could feel it. Roy, one of the two men with Travis, looked around, then said softly, "Let's go, Travis." But Travis was still too proud to admit that he had made a mistake. He gritted his teeth, trying to appear defiant, but deep down, he knew he had lost. Because right now, he was not just facing a dog. He was facing justice. He was facing the eyes of people who were fed up with bullies like him. And most importantly, he was facing himself. Daniel spoke softly. His voice was low but firm. "I don't need the police to handle this." Travis turned, a little hopeful. But Daniel wasn't finished. "But I want you to understand something. He leaned down, gently stroking Ranger. "You think you can kick a dog and not suffer the consequences?" Travis said nothing. Daniel raised his face toward him, though his eyes were no longer visible. "Have you ever wondered why you feel so scared right now?" The question struck Travis. His mouth opened, but nothing came out. Daniel nodded slightly, as if he already had the answer. "It's because you know you did wrong." No anger, no threats, just an undeniable truth. No one needed to say anything more. Travis muttered something under his breath, then turned and left the cafe. Roy and Deke looked at each other, then followed him. A murmur spread through the cafe. Some people applauded lightly, not because of the drama, but because justice had been served unexpectedly. Daniel gently patted Ranger. The dog relaxed, returning to his usual calm demeanor. But everyone knew that, if there was a next time, Ranger would not hesitate to protect his master. Daniel smiled slightly, because he knew, today he did not win with his fists, but with his awareness. This story is not just about a K9 dog or a blind man. This is a story about compassion, respect, and how people stand up for what is right. And today, at Breeze Cafe, justice spoke most deeply. Have you ever witnessed injustice, but dared not speak up? Do you believe that sometimes a small act can change the way people perceive right and wrong? Do you believe that respect does not always have to be demanded with violence, but that sometimes just an undeniable truth is enough to make a bad guy bow his head? Think about it. Because in a world full of chaos, awakening begins in the smallest moments. A gentle breeze blew through the Breeze Cafe, carrying dry leaves that fell to the gray stone floor. The atmosphere seemed to quiet down after what had just happened. Travis and his companions had left, but the echoes of that moment still lingered in the eyes of the witnesses. Daniel bent down, gently placing his hand on Ranger's head. "Thank you, my friend," he whispered. Ranger didn't react much, only shivering slightly, as if to relieve the tension, but his eyes still didn't leave the direction Travis had just disappeared. He didn't bark, didn't growl, but those who knew K9 dogs knew he was still on high alert. A round of applause rang out. First it was just one person, then two, and finally the entire cafe expressed their respect. Not because they had just witnessed a dramatic confrontation, not because Daniel or Ranger had used their strength to win, because they had just witnessed a triumph of human dignity. Daniel didn't need to see it to know. He could feel it in the slow breathing of the people around him, in the sound of chairs moving as someone stood up to approach him. An older man, the one who had warned Travis earlier, slowly placed his hand on Daniel's shoulder. "You taught us a lesson today," he said, his voice filled with respect. "A lesson we all need to remember." Daniel smiled slightly, but he didn't reply. He didn't need to say anything more, because the people here had learned their lesson. That day, someone in the bar recorded the incident and posted it online. A 3-minute video. 3 short minutes, but enough to make the world think. The video quickly went viral, not only because of the drama of the confrontation, but also because of the deep meaning hidden in it. How can a blind man make an aggressive man back down? How can a dog protect its owner without attacking? And how, with just calmness and righteousness, can Daniel get an entire coffee shop on his side? People began to debate, share, and comment. K9 dog trainers spoke up, explaining the loyalty and protective ability of four-legged warriors. Organizations that protect people with disabilities use this story to remind people of their rights and respect. The story of Daniel and Ranger became a powerful reminder. Not everyone is weak. Not all dogs are normal pets. And certainly, not everyone is easy to bully. Unanswered questions. Late one afternoon, Daniel sat at his usual table, his coffee growing cold. He knew that life was full of challenges, and today was just one of them. Ranger was still lying at his feet, but this time, his breathing was slower and more relaxed. He knew the threat was over. But was it the end? Daniel knew that Travis was not the only person in the world who did not understand the value of respect. So what would happen next? Would Travis leave forever? Or would he return one day to regain his honor? Could someone like him learn his lesson? Or would he only become more dangerous? And if that happened, were Daniel and Ranger ready? No one knew what the future would hold. But one thing was certain. This story was not over. Have you ever thought, how many times in our lives do we have to face people like Travis? Do we have the courage to stand up for what is right, even when we can't see the opponent in front of us? Can respect be earned with words alone? Or sometimes we need to prove it with actions. This is not just a story about a canine dog or a blind man. This is a story about all of us. And the biggest question is, what will you do when it's your turn? Some stories seem to be just fleeting moments in life, but contain lessons that make us ponder for a lifetime. Today, through the story of Daniel and Ranger, we have witnessed courage that does not come from fists, but from calmness and justice. We have seen that strength does not only exist in physical strength, but also in steadfastness and indomitable spirit. And most of all, we understand that respect is not something that can be demanded by force, but something that we force others to acknowledge through our values and qualities. Perhaps each of us has encountered a Travis in our lives, people who think they can bully others just because they are weaker. But remember, not everyone is easy to bully. Not all dogs are just pets, and not all blind people are useless. Today's story isn't just about a Seattle coffee shop, a blind man, or a canine. It's about all of us, about the times we faced injustice and those who challenge our morals and kindness. What do you think of this story? On a scale of 0 to 10, how much would you rate it? If you also feel this is a thoughtful story, please like to let us know that these values need to be shared. And if you believe that respect, loyalty, and resilience are things worth sharing, please send this story to your loved ones. We believe that every story has its power, and that sometimes, just a moment, a lesson, a reminder can inspire someone to change their life. And remember, this story isn't over. What happens next? Is this the last time Daniel and the Ranger will have to face the likes of Travis? Or are there more challenges ahead? If you want to continue this emotional journey, don't leave just yet. Subscribe now and stay tuned for more meaningful stories. Stories that will make you think, move you, and most of all, make you see the world differently. See you in the next video. And don't forget, life is full of miracles for those who are willing to listen